Good morning, Wall Street winners. It is Thursday, May the 2nd, and today is really all about Apple and Apple's earnings after the close. We heard yesterday at 2:30 from the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell that the Federal Reserve in the US is looking at keeping rates where they are, interest rates where they are for longer, still views having some rate cuts in mind in 2024. But with the data backing inflation still not coming down to the target of 2%, they're holding off on the implementation of those rate cuts. They haven't really talked about the size of the rate cuts or when those are likely to occur. So I think at this point, the soonest we would see them is June. The likelihood of that is very low. I don't think we'll see anything in July or August. September, October is likely when we'll start to see that if we start to see the data around inflation shift. That said, it was an interesting day yesterday. We'll get into that in just a minute, especially after 2:30. But right now, where we are at 7:40 pre-market Eastern time is all three of the North American indices are in the green. And up, NASDAQ almost 1%, 0.75% for the S&P 500, and 0.5% for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So that's an interesting start to the day. If we go back to what happened yesterday, as you can see here from the Dow chart, at 2:30, we see Federal Chairman Jerome Powell come out and speak, basically say that same old, we're continuing with rates where they are. And the market just took off. It just took off for the better part of an hour, and then at about 3:30 or just before, it started to slide down and settle below where it started when it took off at 2:30. So a really weird surprise there with no new information really coming out and being shared. But the market just took off, and it was a great opportunity to buy in on that upward trajectory and then sell out, not really knowing what was going to happen, but expecting that it was really just a blip in the news cycle. We can see this morning that crude still below $80, which is hammering oil stocks, but they look like they're in for a bit of a recovery and a rebound this morning, with most of them being green. If we scroll down and take a look at the individual names, you've got Lulu making a small comeback. This stock, if we just look at the 1 month, the 30-day, it's been hovering in a window of between 332 and call it 385. So that's a $50 spread there. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity to wait for this stock to drop and then wait for a correction in the days to follow. And you can probably make a couple of percent in that stock in a short amount of time. Now, it is a pricey stock, so you're depending on the amount of money you have, you may not have a lot to put into that. You could also look at options on that as another way to do that, using some options leverage and reducing your capital investment requirements. We go down here today to Cardinal Health. Cardinal Health announces their results in about 45 minutes. So this will be interesting to watch. They're coming out at or around 8:30, and it is off this morning. But we have seen some okay announcements from other healthcare providers, particularly Humana. Humana had some relatively good news. Better than Q1, and it has climbed up a little bit yesterday, but as did most stocks. So we'll see what Cardinal Health has to say. I do expect that this stock will go up $1 or $2 today based on the news, or maybe by the end of the day tomorrow if it doesn't today. And I think it'll drag up HCA and Humana with it in the same kind of percentage increase. So we'll have to wait and see whether that materializes. It's not one, personally, that I would be putting money into at this point. I think there are other options out there. We can see here as we get down to oil that a lot of these are in the green this morning, pre-market, which again doesn't mean anything because we're still a ways out, almost an hour and 3/4 out to the open. But crude is up for the morning, which is good. This crude number needs to get back and start to climb up to the 85s or the mid 80s, and that will push these stocks back to kind of where they were in the last month or so at some of their all-time highs for the last year or so. And then we get down into tech. So it'll be an interesting day today with Apple reporting earnings. They're expecting to miss on kind of growing iPhone market share and sales. iPhone numbers are expected to be down, but they are expected to announce some major stock buybacks to the tune of $90 billion. So that's a significant amount. They have a tremendous amount of cash on their balance sheet, and they could definitely use that. And what that'll do for a company like Apple, and we've seen others like Google and Meta and Microsoft do the same thing, is it will allow their earnings per share numbers to come in at or better than expected going forward, because they'll have reduced the number of shares that are out there and available to stockholders, to shareholders. What we are seeing in the pre-market is we're seeing some really positive NASDAQ and tech stock activity. So we're seeing Salesforce, which I think is an extremely strong buy for a less than 30-day hold to return probably a 10% return. It is set to move about $2.30 right now, but it is under 270. Palo Alto, PanW, this is a stock that's been down in the low 270s, maybe even into the 260s. It's climbed back recently into the 290s. It looks like it's going to get back into the 290s today, maybe up into the high 290s. Palo Alto is going to announce a little later. So they're May 21st to 27th. There's not a definitive date there, but end of May. And I think we're going to see some good results there. Where we'll kind of know whether we'll see good results in that cybersecurity tech space is from Cloudflare today. And this is a stock that I think is going to do very well post-close today. It's up 3% pre-market going into earnings. It does report earnings today just after the bell at 4 o'clock. And I think we're going to have some extremely good earnings from this company. And that in itself should bump that stock if that comes out in favor and they have a good future quarter forecast and annual forecast to go along with that on the earnings call. You can see some movement in some of the others. Microsoft, I think, it's a strong long-term buy in the 390s. Dropped, I believe, into the 380s the other day, maybe high 380s when all the tech stocks started to fall. The other one that's a little more risky, but definitely has a lot of upside, and this ties into NVIDIA, is ARM. So I know we've seen some mixed results and probably created some hesitation in the semiconductor space with some of the earnings this quarter coming in less than expected, growth estimates and future forecasts being a little off and less than expected. But ARM is a company that their design goes into almost all of the chips related to AI, and NVIDIA is partial owner of some of ARM as a company. When it went public, it made some investments in there. And I think it and NVIDIA are set to do really well. NVIDIA is looking like it's going to pop about $15. That may seem like a lot. It was up to $8.80 yesterday, so it still doesn't get it back to where it was yesterday. But I think it has the ability to move back up into the 900s by the end of this month. They announce as well, I think it's the third week of May. So we'll start to hear more about NVIDIA and that trajectory going forward. The other interesting one today with the Apple news will be BABA. BABA announces in 12 days. So we're about 2 weeks out from Alibaba's announcement. But Apple and their sales in China should help to give us a little bit of background on the health of the Chinese consumer economy. It appears to be picking up, but it has certainly been delayed to the tune of almost 2 years of delay. And there's a lot going on in China with real estate and other issues. But we'll see that if that consumer environment starts to pick up, it's going to move a lot of those Chinese tech names, but it'll also be beneficial to the American tech names that are allowed to sell into China and that do business there. So there's a lot of risk for those that don't because of some of the tariffs and some of the restrictions, but there are still a lot of tech companies that can sell into China. Meta looks like it's making a bit of a recovery this morning. It did well yesterday. It's climbing back. Again, a solid believer in Meta. If you're looking for a long-term purchase in the 440s or 430s, Meta, I think, is a steal based on where it's projecting to be. They just had some really bad messaging, the way they communicated their future forecasts in this last quarter, that caused a decline in the stock. But they're going to make up for that quite easily, in my opinion, on the financial results that they're producing going forward. And then if we scroll down to financials, we can see that the financials are looking like they're almost all in the green. Visa is an interesting one to maybe look at. Their results were great, whereas MasterCard the other day came in with a earnings and revenue miss, so poorer than expected results and poorer than expected network activity on their transaction network. So it does look like people are favoring Visa over MasterCard. American Express earlier in the quarter did come out with positive results, more of a corporate travel card, but also getting more market share in the personal space, personal market these days. I think you're going to do well with Visa going forward. And then the other ones that I have nothing bad to say about would be JP Morgan. I think at the low 190s, this is a stock that had good earnings, has a great CEO, probably one of the best on Wall Street, Jamie Dimon, and is set to hit the low to maybe 200, 220 kind of range in that ballpark by the end of the year. Morgan Stanley, another favorable one as we start to see M&A activity picking up a little bit and not nearly the extent we need it to. And then Goldman. I mean, Goldman was a $400 stock, even $380 a month ago, and it's now going to hit $430 today. So some other good ones there that I would keep an eye on. I think that MTB is a little rich and overvalued at 146. I would pick this up if it came down into the 135 range, which I think it will in the next month or so. And that's where we are today. So good luck with your trades, manage your risk, look for your buying opportunities, and don't be afraid to take a chance. And you can always put in a stop loss order to get out if things turn the other way, or hold it for them to correct and come back up to make a profit for yourself.